My first prediction for today's NBA games is for the game between the Heat and the Knicks. When I look at this matchup at Madison Square Garden, I immediately feel that classic New York energy, that sense that the Knicks usually punch a little harder on their home floor. And tonight, with the Heat rolling in after that sloppy loss to Cleveland's backups, this one has the vibe of a statement game for New York. Miami is an interesting team this season. They're running with pace, firing early in the shot clock, and surprising a lot of bettors with how quickly they've turned into an up-tempo group. Norman Powell has slid in like he's been there for years. Wiggins has given them some solid two-way minutes, and Spoelstra is squeezing everything possible out of a roster that's still missing high-end creators. That loss to Cleveland, though, exposed the one thing Miami hasn't corrected. They can fall asleep defensively, and when they do, it flips the whole game. They came out blazing with 38 first-quarter points, then collapsed late, and you cannot survive that roller coaster inside MSG. Now, when I shift my focus to the Knicks, I see a team that had one bad night against Orlando. They were flat from the jump, playing the second leg of a back-to-back, and they looked like a group that burned too much energy during their previous 5-game streak. Even with that ugly showing, the identity at MSG remains strong. This team has been dominant at home, and they've put up some serious scoring nights in this building. Memphis, Brooklyn, Minnesota, they all walked out bruised. What I like about this Knicks squad is how balanced they've become under their new staff. They score with rhythm, they share it well, they move with purpose, and even though their pace is slower than what you'd expect, their half-court execution has been razor-sharp. Karl-Anthony Towns gives them a steady scoring option. OG Anunoby stabilizes the perimeter, Bridges plugs gaps everywhere, and the bench has given them real lift. Yes, missing Brunson takes a chunk out of their creation, but the collective is strong enough to handle stretches without him, especially at home. Miami, on the other hand, is walking and wounded. No Harrow, no Rozier, and Bam is still uncertain. And while they've managed to survive in that condition, they haven't faced many environments this tough while shorthanded. Without Bam in full form, New York should have a size advantage inside, and that's where I expect Towns and the Knicks bigs to do real damage. Miami's defensive rebounding hasn't been reliable, and if New York gets second-chance looks, I see the Garden crowd turning this into one of those classic Knicks surges. I also have to factor in motivation. The Knicks don't take kindly to back-to-back home losses. Not with this roster. Not with this coaching staff. This is exactly the type of game where New York leans into its physicality, controls tempo, and forces Miami into long, contested jumpers. If the Heat can't force turnovers and get early offense, they're in for a long night. So after breaking this one down across all angles, pace, health, rhythm, motivation, matchups, and the way both teams respond after losses, I'm planting my flag on the side that has the stronger foundation and the better situational spot. My prediction is simple. I'm playing the Knicks to win and cover the 5-point spread. I trust their structure, their presence at MSG, and their ability to respond effectively. This is a bounce-back spot for New York, and I'm riding with them. Today's second prediction is for the game between the Philadelphia 76ers and Detroit Pistons. When I look at tonight's matchup between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Detroit Pistons, I see one of those games that can swing fast depending on who actually suits up. And trust me, I've watched enough NBA basketball over the last 3 decades to know that these injury report roulette nights can separate the bettors who panic from the bettors who stay steady. Now, the Pistons have been one of the surprises of this early season. They've stacked wins, they've played with swagger, and they've shown they can punch above their weight even when the lineup is patched together. Their ball movement has been crisp, their effort on the glass has been consistent, and the young core has bought into playing downhill from the first possession. At home, they've been even tougher, pushing the pace, controlling the paint, and getting the crowd involved early. But here's the catch. Almost their entire starting group is banged up. Cade Cunningham is questionable, Jalen Duren is questionable, and the wings that usually give them length and defensive versatility are not a lock to play either. And even though they've stolen wins shorthanded, like that surprising takedown of Chicago, the Sixers are not the Bulls. If Detroit enters this one without multiple starters, that bench is going to be stretched thin in matchups that they usually survive with size, physicality, and rim pressure. Now let's flip it to Philly. The Sixers are dealing with their own injury issues. Joel Embiid is out, Paul George is out, and that's not a small deal, but this Sixers team has had so much practice playing without stars that it barely rattles them anymore. Tyrese Maxey has reached that level where he can carry a team through long stretches just by pushing tempo and punishing mismatches. The role players know how to fill gaps. Grimes spaces the floor, Oubre picks his spots, and Drummond has been a monster cleaning the glass. The other thing that jumps off the page for me is how reliable Philly has been against the spread. When a team consistently covers night after night, it tells me they know how to compete, they know how to execute late, and they don't fold when the rotation shrinks. Even in that recent loss to Detroit, they still covered, which says a lot when you're on the road and shorthanded. From a style of play perspective, I also think this matchup leans toward Philadelphia. The Sixers are more comfortable in grind-out games on the road, while Detroit tends to lean on early rhythm and transition flow. If Cunningham or Duren sits, that rhythm gets disrupted immediately. And if both of them sit, Detroit's interior defense looks very different, and that's where Philly can chop away possession after possession. Look, I respect what the Pistons have built so far, and I'm not stepping in front of their momentum lightly. But with their injury list stacked and the Sixers playing some of their smartest basketball in weeks, I'm siding with the group that has shown it can still control a game even with big names missing. When all is said and done, I'm backing the more dependable side here. I'm riding with Philadelphia to handle the number tonight. The third prediction for today is for the game between the Trail Blazers and the Rockets. When I look at this matchup between Portland and Houston, I see two teams heading in very different directions, but I also see a spread that feels a little too heavy for the moment. So let me walk you through how I'm breaking this game down for my tips and streams crew. Houston has been flying out of the gate behind Kevin Durant's seamless integration. They've become one of the most explosive offenses in the league, dropping points in bunches and getting efficient nights from guys all over the rotation. Alperen Sengun looks like he's unlocked a new level of his game, scoring at will inside while picking apart defenses as a passer. Amen Thompson has taken a big leap, too, playing with confidence, purpose, and that downhill energy that Houston desperately needed. When you combine that with the shooting around him, you understand why this team has been rolling. The Rockets haven't just been good, they've been dominant at times. That first half against Washington, scoring at will, rotating at full speed defensively, and basically shutting the door before the fourth quarter even mattered, that's what elite teams do. And when Durant barely needs to hit 30 minutes to take over a game, you know they're comfortable. But here's the thing. Portland isn't folding for anybody. Not this year. I've watched every one of their games closely, and what stands out to me is how consistently they compete, regardless of who's in or out. They've dealt with injuries to core pieces, and they still show up to fight every single night. That win over the Pelicans said a lot about their makeup. Shaedon Sharpe is stepping directly into the spotlight, putting up big-time scoring nights with a smoothness that tells me he's only scratching the surface. Deni Avdija has been a rock, confident, aggressive, and more than willing to take on primary scoring duties. And let's be honest, the Blazers' path hasn't been soft. They've already faced heavyweights like the Clippers, Lakers, Thunder, and Nuggets. They've been battle-tested early, and that matters when you walk into Houston's arena as an underdog. What I love about this team is their refusal to go away. Double-digit deficits don't scare them. Close games don't shake them. They've been in tight finishes against strong squads, and more often than not, they're still within striking distance in the final minutes. Now, do I think Houston probably wins this game? Yeah, they've earned that respect with the way they've played. But covering this number against a Portland team that loves the underdog role, plays with pace, and keeps opponents honest, that's where things get tricky. Houston has been strong, but they're not invincible. And Portland has a habit of ruining nights for favorites who take them lightly. Between their ability to grind out possessions, their knack for hanging around against better teams, and the confidence they're carrying from their recent performances, I can't just write them off. I don't need Portland to pull off a miracle. I just need them to show up the way they've been showing up all season. And based on everything I've seen, I'm trusting them to fight from tip-off to the final horn. My money is on the Blazers to cover the 8.5 tonight. The last today's prediction is for the game, the Golden State Warriors and San Antonio Spurs. All right, let me break this one down the way I see it. We've got Golden State rolling back into San Antonio just 2 days after that wild 125-120 shootout And honestly, I'm still replaying the way the Warriors flipped that game on its head. They walked into the Frostbank Arena on tired legs, down big early, and still managed to torch the Spurs for 78 second-half points. For a team that has been shaky on the road, that type of response tells me something about their competitive fire. Steph was in full flamethrower mode with his 46, but even behind those fireworks, what stood out to me was how Golden State kept punching back whenever San Antonio tried to make a run. Jimmy Butler 3 looked sharp, Moody came in sniping, and despite Draymond basically having a throwaway night, the Warriors still found a way to control the tempo after halftime. That's the kind of backbone I always look for when deciding whether an underdog can hang inside a number. Now, don't get me wrong, San Antonio is for real. Wemby is putting up video game stat lines every other night, and he looked ridiculous again with that triple-double. Castle stuffed the stat sheet, Vassell knocked down shots, and the Spurs executed their game plan early. But for as good as they've been at home, they showed cracks when Golden State turned the pace up. One thing about a young team, when they give up momentum, sometimes they give it up in waves. What I'm watching tonight is how both sides adjust. The Spurs clearly don't want Curry catching fire again, but the problem is that he doesn't need 46 for Golden State to stay competitive. This team shoots enough threes, moves the ball well enough, and has enough experience in tight, emotional spots to stay afloat even if Steph has a normal human game. And with Jonathan Kuminga and Podziemski stepping into bigger roles, you can feel a bit more balance forming around that veteran core. San Antonio can absolutely come out swinging. They're still a tough home squad. They still have the length to bother shooters, and they still play with a ton of confidence behind Wembanyama. But beating the same team twice in the same building, especially a veteran group like Golden State, is never an easy ask. And when a young squad loses a game they felt they should have won, that pressure can sneak into their decision-making late. For me, this comes down to trust. I trust Golden State's experience, I trust their shot-making, and I trust their ability to respond when the game tightens up. San Antonio might get their revenge, but I don't see them blowing the doors off a Warriors team that just handled them on short rest and now comes in with all the momentum. I'm riding with Golden State tonight. I'm taking the Warriors plus 3.5 to cover the number. They've got the experience, the shooters, and the poise to stay inside that spread, and I'm confident they keep this one tight from start to finish.